Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for more stories. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. My wife suggested we celebrate our anniversary at her family's remote cabin. On the drive up, my 10-year-old daughter quietly passed me a note. "Dad, turn around now." I made up an excuse to stop at a gas station. In the restroom, she pulled out my wife's hidden second phone. What I saw made my stomach turn. Jason Bradley wiped sweat from his brow, surveying the foundation of his latest build. At 41, his hands bore the rough marks of a man who built everything he had from nothing. The Denver Post had been relentless when his phone buzzed. "Bradley Construction Group," he answered, voice calm, but carrying the tone that earned him respect across Colorado. "Jason, we need to lock in our anniversary plans," Melissa said. 16 years deserves something special. He sighed, eyes on the skyline, the one he helped build. "I thought we agreed. Your family's cabin, just us and the kids. I was thinking maybe drop the kids at my sister's. Make it romantic." Her tone made him pause. 16 years with Melissa had given him instincts. Something was off. "No, the kids are coming," he said. "Addison has been counting the days, and Tyler needs time away from those screams." There was a brief silence. "Fine, I'll pack for 4, Melissa replied. As he hung up, Jason couldn't shake the unease gnawing at him. Over the past 14 months, Melissa had changed. Small things that individually meant nothing, but together formed a troubling pattern. New clothes, late book club meetings, unexplained absences, and a growing emotional distance. That evening, Jason pulled into their upscale Washington Park neighborhood, a home he had partially built himself. Through the window, he saw Melissa on the phone in the kitchen, her back turned, laughing, a real laugh, one he rarely heard anymore. When she spotted his truck, she quickly ended the call. "Who was that?" he asked casually, setting his keys on the counter. "Kara, going over some details for when we get back from the cabin," Melissa answered, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. At 37, she still turned heads with her fitness model physique and calculated style. Jason nodded, not pushing further despite the lie. Kara was in Vail this week. He knew because he had spoken to her husband Scott about a potential renovation job just hours earlier. He found Addison in her room, organizing her small backpack for the trip. His daughter looked up with serious brown eyes, so like his own. Sometimes Jason felt she saw everything. "Daddy, can we go fishing at the cabin like last time?" she asked. "Absolutely, princess. Just you and me at dawn like always." He ruffled her hair, noticing a drawing on her desk. It showed 4 stick figures standing together, with a 5th figure drawn faintly in the background. When he asked about it, Addison shrugged and quickly put it away. Tyler's door was closed, the sounds of his gaming headset filtering through. At 15, his son had begun to pull away, spending more time with Melissa and adopting her materialistic values. Jason knocked, but only received a grunt in response. That night, Jason lay awake next to Melissa, watching her scroll through her phone, a small smile playing on her lips. When she noticed him watching, she quickly set the phone face down. "What?" she asked, a defensive edge to her voice. "Nothing," Jason replied. "Just thinking about the cabin. It's been a while since we were all there together." She murmured noncommittally, turning away from him. The next morning, as they loaded the SUV for the 4-hour drive to the remote cabin near Twin Lakes, Jason noticed Melissa making a quick, hushed call from the garage. When she returned, she seemed distracted, repeatedly checking her phone. Addison, watching everything with quiet intensity, stuck close to her father. During a brief moment alone as Melissa did a final check of the house, Addison whispered, "Dad, I don't think Mom wants to go to the cabin." "Why is that?" Jason asked. Addison hesitated, her voice soft. She told someone on the phone. "It's a complication." Addison's eyes, too perceptive for her age, held a silent question that Jason wasn't ready to answer. The drive up the mountains felt tense. Tyler sat quietly in the back seat, focused on his devices. Melissa kept checking her phone, even though the signal was bad. Jason didn't say a word, gripping the steering wheel tightly and watching everything around them. What really got to him wasn't just the fear of being betrayed. It was the sinking feeling that his whole life might be based on something shaky and unreliable. The winding mountain roads grew narrower as Jason's SUV climbed toward Twin Lakes. Melissa had become increasingly agitated as cell service faded, checking her phone compulsively at every curve. Maybe we should have gone to Cabo instead, she said, breaking an hour-long silence. This place is so isolated. Jason's eyes flickered to the rearview mirror. That's the point of a getaway, isn't it? To disconnect. In the back seat, Addison met her father's gaze in the mirror, a silent communication passing between them. She had been unusually quiet, her small notebook on her lap, where she'd been scribbling instead of playing her usual card games. Tyler pulled one earbud out. How much longer? I'm starving. About 35 minutes, Jason replied. Stop at the general store first and stock up before we head to the cabin, Melissa said. Melissa's phone chimed with a text, a brief moment of service. Her reaction was subtle but unmistakable. A quick intake of breath, a flush creeping up her neck, fingers moving rapidly to reply before the signal disappeared again. Work? Jason asked casually. Kara, Melissa lied smoothly. Making sure we arrived safely. The family stopped at Pine Ridge General Store, the last outpost before the remote cabin. While Melissa shopped for groceries with Tyler, Jason checked their fishing gear outside the store. Addison approached him, glancing around to ensure they were alone. Dad, she whispered. I need to tell you something. Jason crouched to her level. What is it, princess? Addison's eyes darted toward the store. Mom has another phone. I saw her hiding it in her toiletry bag. A cold weight settled in Jason's stomach. Are you sure? Addison nodded solemnly. She doesn't know I saw. She uses it when she thinks no one's watching. Before Jason could ask more, Melissa and Tyler emerged from the store with grocery bags. The conversation halted, but the seed of doubt had been planted. As they continued toward the cabin, Jason's mind raced with possibilities. None of them were innocent. The Lawson family cabin sat nestled among tall pines overlooking a serene lake. Originally a modest structure built by Melissa's grandfather, Jason had spent 3 summers renovating it into a comfortable retreat with modern amenities while maintaining its rustic charm. It symbolized countless hours of his labor, a gift of love to a family he now feared was falling apart. After unloading the SUV, Jason announced, Tyler, help me check the generator and water pump. Addison, you and Mom can get the beds made. Melissa frowned. Actually, I should start dinner. Addison can handle the beds. In the utility shed, Jason tried engaging with his son. How's school going? Still having trouble with algebra? Tyler shrugged, barely glancing up from his phone despite the lack of service. It's fine. You know there's more to life than that screen, Jason said, checking the generator oil. When I was your age, yeah, I know, Tyler interrupted. You were building houses and working 2 jobs. We've heard it. The disrespect stung, but Jason recognized a deeper issue. Everything okay between you and your mom lately? Tyler stiffened. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just asking. Mom's cool. She gets me, Tyler muttered. Unlike some people. Jason let the comment slide, focusing on the task at hand while processing what this might mean. Had Melissa been turning their son against him? What else didn't he know? Dinner was a strained affair. Melissa seemed distracted, her attention divided between picking at her food and glancing out the window toward the lake. Jason noticed her checking her watch several times. Early appointment tomorrow? He asked pointedly. What? No, Melissa replied too quickly. Just thinking we should watch the sunset by the lake after dinner. Great idea, Jason agreed, watching her face fall slightly. Family tradition, right kids? Tyler groaned, but Addison's eyes lit up. Can we make s'mores, too? As they cleared the table, Addison slipped close to her father and quietly passed him a folded note. Their eyes met briefly before she turned to help Melissa with the dishes. Jason waited until he stepped outside onto the porch to unfold the note. In Addison's careful handwriting were 6 words that confirmed his worst fears. Dad, turn around now. Mom's lying. Jason's military training kicked in. Assess, plan, execute. He needed evidence before confronting her. He folded the note carefully into his pocket and rejoined his family, a calm mask hiding the storm inside. I think I left the fishing gear in the car, he announced. I'll grab it before dark. Outside, Jason circled back to peer through the cabin window. Melissa was checking her watch again, her expression anxious. He watched as she told Addison and Tyler she needed to use the bathroom, then slipped upstairs with her toiletry bag. Jason made his decision. Addison, he called through the screen door. Want to help me find the tackle box? His daughter was at his side in seconds. Once they were alone by the SUV, Jason knelt down. I need you to be honest with me. What else do you know? Addison's eyes welled with tears. Mom's planning something bad. I heard her talking to someone about meeting at the cabin. She didn't know I was listening. When was this? Yesterday. She said the cabin was perfect because you'd never suspect. Addison hesitated. Dad, there's more. I found messages on her secret phone. She accidentally left it in the bathroom. It said they were going to tell you this weekend. Jason's heart pounded in his chest. Tell me what? That she's leaving with him. The betrayal cut deep, but Jason kept his composure for his daughter's sake. Addison, I need a favor. A big one. Can you help me? She nodded without hesitation. I'm going to tell Mom we need to drive back to town for something I forgot. I need you to find that phone and bring it to me. Can you do that? It's in her blue toiletry bag, Addison whispered. The small zipper pocket. I already checked. Jason stared at his daughter, impressed by her resourcefulness and saddened that she had been burdened with such knowledge. How long have you known? For months, Addison admitted. I tried to tell you, but you always said Mom was just busy with her new job. The realization that his 10-year-old had been carrying this secret alone filled Jason with guilt and determination. I'm sorry, Princess, but that ends today. Back inside the cabin, Jason announced that they needed to run to the general store for propane since the tanks were almost empty. Won't last the weekend, he added. Can it wait until morning? Melissa asked, clearly annoyed. Better safe than sorry with the night temperatures dropping, Jason insisted. Addison, want to come along for the ride? As they prepared to leave, Addison disappeared upstairs to use the bathroom. Minutes later, she reappeared, giving her father a nearly imperceptible nod. The drive back down the mountain was silent until they were well away from the cabin. Jason pulled into the empty parking lot of a scenic overlook. Let me see it, he said quietly. Addison reached into her pocket and handed him a small prepaid phone. I'm sorry, Dad, she whispered. You have nothing to be sorry for, Jason reassured her, taking the phone. You did exactly right. The bathroom at the Pine Ridge gas station smelled of pine cleaner and neglect. Jason locked the door behind them, his hands steady despite the earthquake happening inside him. Addison stood watch by the sink as he powered on the phone. No password. Melissa hadn't expected anyone to find it. The messages loaded, revealing months of conversation between Melissa and someone saved simply as M. Jason scrolled through them rapidly, each message like a knife twist. Miss you already. 3 more days until freedom. Are you sure he doesn't suspect? Jason is clueless, too busy with his precious business to notice anything. What about the kids? Tyler will adjust. Addison might be a problem, too attached to her father. The most recent messages outlined their plan. Miles Lawson, Melissa's brother-in-law and Kara's husband, would arrive at the cabin tomorrow night, while Jason took the kids fishing. They would confront Jason together, tell him about their 3-year affair, and announce they were leaving together. They'd already secured an apartment in Scottsdale. Miles, the man who had sat at their dinner table, played with their children, and accepted Jason's help with renovating his own home. The betrayal was overwhelming. Dad, Addison's small voice broke through his shock. Are you okay? Jason composed himself, shielding his daughter from the depths of his rage. I'm fine, Princess. You did good. What are we going to do now? Jason considered their options. The tactical part of his brain, honed during his years as a Marine and later in his construction business, was already devising a plan. But first, he needed more information. We're going to get some ice cream, he said calmly, pocketing the phone. Then we'll make a plan. At the small diner next to the gas station, Jason bought Addison a sundae while he made 2 calls from his phone, stepping outside briefly. When he returned, his expression was controlled, revealing nothing of the storm inside. Addison, I need you to be brave a little longer, he said, sliding into the booth. We're going back to the cabin, and we're going to act like nothing's wrong, but with Mom and Uncle Miles. I know, Addison interrupted, her voice small. But sometimes in life, you need to gather all the facts before you act. Jason leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. This is important. Can you trust me? Addison nodded, her spoon pausing midway to her mouth. Are you and Mom getting divorced? Her question hit Jason like a punch to the gut. I don't know yet, he said quietly, his heart aching. But no matter what, you and Tyler will always be my priority. Understand? Back at the cabin, Melissa was pacing the living room. What took so long? She asked, noticing Jason's absence. I was about to call Dash, she stopped, realizing how absurd the statement was considering there was no service at the store. Jason lied smoothly. Had to wait for them to bring more propane from the back. That night, Jason lay awake beside his wife, listening to her breathing, wondering how many nights she had lain beside him, thinking of another man. The phone, hidden in his fishing tackle box, held not just messages, but private photos and evidence of meetups in hotels, while Jason thought Melissa was attending client meetings for her boutique marketing job. Plans for their new life, funded by money from their joint accounts. Morning brought forced normalcy. Jason suggested taking the kids fishing at dawn as planned, but Melissa suddenly insisted on joining them, something she'd never done before. "Since when do you fish?" Jason asked, raising an eyebrow as he prepared the gear. "It's our anniversary weekend. I want to try new things," she replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Jason recognized the tactic. She was buying time, preventing him from being alone with the kids. As they walked to the lake, Addison stayed close to her father while Tyler trudged ahead, still sullen, but at least away from his devices. Jason noted Melissa checking her watch again. "Expecting someone?" he asked casually. Her head snapped up. "What?" "No, just checking how much daylight we have." The fishing trip was cut short when Melissa claimed a headache. Back at the cabin, Jason watched as she took 2 aspirin and retreated upstairs to rest, though not before checking the hidden pocket where the prepaid phone should have been. Her momentary panic was only visible to Jason, who had been watching for it. "Kids, why don't you explore the trails a bit? Stay within shouting distance," Jason suggested once Melissa was upstairs. When they were gone, he made another call, keeping his voice low. "Tessa, it's Jason Bradley. I need that information now." "Yes, everything." Tessa Vaughn, a private investigator Jason had hired after Addison's revelation at the gas station, had confirmed what the phone had suggested. The affair had been ongoing for 3 years. Miles had been embezzling from his financial consulting firm to fund their planned escape. The most painful discovery was that Tyler knew not everything, but enough. Melissa had been subtly priming him, telling him Jason was controlling, that they deserved better. When the kids returned from their hike, Jason pulled Tyler aside. "Son, we need to talk." Tyler immediately tensed, his defiance clear. "About what?" "About why you've been so angry with me. About what Mom has told you." The boy's face went pale. "She didn't tell me anything." "I know about Miles," Jason said firmly. "I know Mom's been talking to you about leaving." Tears welled in Tyler's eyes. "She said you try to keep us, that you take everything from her." Jason kept his anger in check. "Has your mother ever known me to be unfair? To be cruel?" Tyler looked away. "No. I built this family with everything I have. I would never abandon you or your sister," Jason said, his voice steady. He placed his hands on his son's shoulders. "But I need the truth. All of it." Slowly, Tyler revealed what he knew. Melissa had told him they would start fresh with Miles, who would be a better match for their family. She'd promised Tyler a new school where he could reinvent himself, free from his reputation as the contractor's son. "Did she say when this was happening?" Jason asked. "After this trip," Tyler admitted. "She said, we should enjoy one last weekend as a family. For memories." The sheer calculation of it all hardened Jason's resolve. His wife and her partner had planned not only to destroy his marriage, but to take his children and bankrupt him in the process. As evening approached, Jason noticed Melissa growing increasingly anxious. She kept glancing out the window toward the long driveway, then changed into a new outfit, applied makeup, and opened a bottle of wine, setting the stage. "Kids, time for a movie in the loft," Jason announced, giving them a significant look. Big screen, popcorn, the works. Once they were upstairs, Jason poured himself a glass of bourbon and sat across from Melissa at the kitchen table. 16 years, he said quietly. 16 years, Melissa." She set down her wine glass, eyes narrowing. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know," Jason said, his voice calm but dangerous in its restraint. "I know about Miles. I know about Scottsdale. I know about the money you've been moving from our accounts." Melissa's face cycled through shock, denial, and finally cold calculation. "How long have you known?" "Long enough." The sound of tires on gravel interrupted them. Headlights swept across the cabin windows as a vehicle approached. "Perfect timing," Jason said, taking another sip of bourbon. "Right on schedule." Melissa stood abruptly. "Jason, let me explain." "Save it for the attorneys," he cut her off. But first, let's welcome our guest, shall we? The headlights illuminated the cabin windows as Miles's Mercedes GLE pulled up outside. Melissa's eyes darted between Jason and the door, panic creeping into her expression. "Jason, please," she began. "Please don't make a scene." Jason's voice remained unervingly calm. "Please let you destroy our family quietly." A knock at the door. 3 confident raps. Jason stood, straightening his shoulders. "Should I get that? Or would you prefer to welcome your partner yourself?" The color drained from Melissa's face. "The kids are upstairs watching a movie with headphones on. All part of the plan, right?" Jason moved toward the door. "Your plan was to have this conversation with me. Well, now we'll have it." He opened the door to reveal Miles tall, tanned, and dressed in expensive casual attire that screamed more of aspiring wealth than actual success. For a brief moment, Miles's practiced smile faltered as he saw Jason standing in the doorway instead of Melissa. But he quickly recovered. "Jason," he greeted, his voice steady. "I thought you'd be out with the kids." "Change of plans," Jason replied, stepping aside to let Miles in. "We were just talking about you." Miles walked in with the confidence of a man who thought he had all the power, the same kind Jason had seen in opponents who failed to realize they were already defeated. "Hello, Melissa," Miles nodded, maintaining a casual facade. "Thought we agreed on timing." "She didn't have much choice," Jason interjected, his tone sharp. "Hard to coordinate when your prepaid phone goes missing." Miles's eyes widened ever so slightly before his expression smoothed into indifference. "I don't know what you're talking about." Jason took the phone out of his pocket and threw it on the coffee table. "There are 3 years of messages that prove otherwise," he said. "Some of them pretty detailed." The room fell silent. What used to feel like a warm cabin now felt tight and suffocating. The 3 of them stood there, not saying a word, but the tension between them was thick. Melissa found her voice, switching from denial to a more measured tone. "We didn't want it to happen this way. We were going to tell you tomorrow properly, with dignity." "Dignity?" Jason scoffed, his laugh devoid of humor. "Is that what you call planning to take my children across state lines, draining our accounts, turning my son against me?" Miles stepped forward, raising his hands in a placating gesture. "Look, we should all calm down. We're adults here. These things happen." "These things," Jason interrupted, his voice sharp and cold. "You mean being involved with your wife's sister? Stabbing your own brother-in-law in the back?" Miles clenched his jaw. "Melissa and I didn't plan for this. It just happened." "For 3 years," Jason interrupted, his anger mounting, "with hotel receipts, secret phones, and an apartment lease in Scottsdale. That's not just happening. That's calculated betrayal." A creak on the stairs interrupted them. Addison stood halfway down, her small face solemn. "Dad, is everything okay?" "It's fine, Princess," Jason assured her. "Uncle Miles just stopped by to talk about some grown-up things. Head back upstairs, okay?" Addison's eyes shifted between her parents and Miles, understanding far more than a child should. "I told Dad about the phone," she said to Melissa, her voice steady. "I'm not sorry." Melissa blanched. Addison hesitated before heading upstairs. Jason gently intervened. "I've got this," he said as Addison reluctantly retreated, turning back to the 2 adults, his tone hardened. "Here's what's going to happen. Miles, you're going to leave. Melissa, you can go with him if you want, but the kids stay with me tonight." "You can't decide that," Melissa protested. "They're my children, too." "You should have thought about that before planning to take them to Arizona," Jason replied calmly. "Don't worry. We'll sort out custody arrangements the proper way unless you'd prefer I call the police about the financial improprieties I've discovered." Miles stiffened. "What financial improprieties?" "The ones Tessa Vaughn documented," Jason said, referring to the private investigator. "Transfers from Clearview Capital client accounts to your personal offshore account. Did you think I wouldn't check thoroughly once I knew about the affair?" Miles paled. "You're bluffing." Jason pulled out his phone, showing a series of transaction records. $280,000 over 20 months. Creative accounting, but not creative enough. Miles was left speechless, the revelation sinking in. Melissa looked between the 2 men, her future crumbling before her eyes. "You set us up," she accused Jason. "This whole cabin trip was your idea. I just played along once Addison showed me what was really happening," Jason reminded her coldly. Miles regained his composure, his anger replacing the shock. You can't prove anything without exposing your own investigation methods. Private investigators accessing financial records, that's not exactly legal either. Jason smiled thinly. I don't need to prove anything in court yet. Right now, I just need you both to understand the situation. You're not holding any cards here. He pulled another document from his jacket pocket. This is a record of every dollar removed from our joint accounts over the past year, funds that were contractually designated for our children's education and our business operations. Melissa's breathing quickened as Jason finished. I had every right to steal from your children. A judge might disagree, Jason said evenly, especially when they see the messages discussing how to hide assets during the divorce you were planning. The cabin fell silent, except for the distant sound of the movie playing upstairs. Jason let the moment stretch, watching Miles and Melissa exchange panicked glances. What do you want? Miles finally asked, his voice tight. Tonight, I want you gone, Jason stated flatly. Tomorrow, my attorney will contact you both with terms. Terms? Melissa echoed. For how this ends, Jason clarified. Because it is ending. Make no mistake. Miles grabbed his car keys. This is Melissa. Get your things. We're leaving the kids, she began. Stay with me, Jason said firmly. Unless you want the authorities questioning why you're fleeing across state lines with minors after withdrawing large sums of money. Miles headed for the door, his earlier confidence shattered. Melissa hesitated, looking up toward where her children were. For a moment, Jason saw a flicker of maternal concern, quickly overshadowed by self-preservation. I'll call you tomorrow, she told Jason, grabbing her purse. This isn't over. Actually, it is, Jason replied. It ended the moment you involved my children in your betrayal. After they left, the cabin felt eerily quiet. Jason poured another bourbon and called upstairs. Kids, you can come down now. Addison appeared first, followed by Tyler, whose red-rimmed eyes revealed he'd been crying. Where is Mom? Tyler asked, his voice small. She left with Uncle Miles, Jason answered honestly. She needed some time to think. Addison climbed onto her father's lap, something she hadn't done in years. Are we staying at the cabin? She asked. Jason nodded. For tonight. Tomorrow we'll head home and figure things out. Is Mom coming back? Tyler pressed, confusion and hurt evident in his expression. Jason looked his son in the eyes. I don't know, buddy. But no matter what happens between me and your mother, nothing changes how much I love you both. That night, with his children finally asleep, Jason sat on the cabin porch staring at the stars. He'd won the first round, but he harbored no illusions about what was coming. Melissa wouldn't surrender without a fight, and Miles had too much to lose to back down easily. His phone vibrated with a text from Tessa Vaughn. Additional information secured. Moving to phase 2 per your instructions. Jason texted back a single word, proceed. The real work was just beginning. The drive back to Denver the next day was heavy with unspoken questions. Tyler sat silently in the back seat, headphones on but no music playing, using them as a shield against conversation. Addison alternated between watching the mountains pass and studying her father's profile, gauging his composure. Jason maintained a steady presence for his children, but his mind raced through the intricate plan he'd set in motion. Tessa Vaughn had been thorough, uncovering layers of deception that went far beyond the affair. The financial trail Tessa had uncovered revealed something far more calculated than mere infidelity. When Jason returned home, he found evidence that Melissa had already removed personal items, clothes, jewelry, mementos. She'd been preparing for this split much longer than he'd realized. What surprised him, though, was finding the custom suit he had ordered for their anniversary still hanging in the master bedroom closet, the one she had insisted he purchase. Next to it was a bag containing the dress she'd asked him to buy her as a gift, props for a performance that would never take place. Jason called his longtime friend Brian Keller, arranging for the children to spend the afternoon with his family while he took care of some urgent business. Brian, a former Marine who had served alongside Jason before they both entered civilian life, immediately grasped the gravity of the situation. How bad? Brian asked when he arrived to pick up the kids. Worse than I thought, Jason replied quietly, making sure Tyler and Addison were out of earshot. I need a few hours to set things in motion. Brian clapped him on the shoulder. Whatever you need. Monica will keep the kids distracted with the new pool. Once alone, Jason reached out to his attorney, Jordan Pierce, who who arrived within the hour with a thick folder of documents. Jordan wasn't just Jason's lawyer. He was a strategic partner in several business ventures, a man who understood that legal battles were won before they ever reached a courtroom. Tessa sent everything over this morning, Jordan said, spreading papers across the dining room table. It's a mess, Jason, but it gives us leverage. The documents revealed that Miles had been systematically embezzling from his investment clients for nearly 4 years, longer than the affair had been ongoing. Even more disturbing was the evidence that Melissa had been actively assisting him in laundering money through shell companies registered under variations of her maiden name. The money they took from your joint accounts was just the surface, Jordan explained, showing Jason transaction records. They were using your business reputation as cover for something bigger. Jason's expression hardened as he examined the paperwork. They were planning to frame me if things went south. Jordan nodded grimly. These duplicate contracts with your company letterhead, but subtle differences in the terms classic setup for fraud allegations. If their plan had worked, you'd be fighting criminal charges while they disappeared with the assets and the kids. The realization that his wife had not only betrayed their marriage, but had actively participated in setting him up for financial ruin and potential imprisonment ignited something cold and methodical in Jason's mind. Options, he asked simply. Jordan outlined several approaches, from immediate legal action to more strategic countermeasures. The problem is, going public means exposing everything, including their fabricated allegations against you, Jordan explained. The investigation alone could damage your business reputation, and the kids would be caught in the crossfire. Jason thought about how Tyler was already struggling, and before they could continue, they were interrupted by the doorbell. When Jason answered, he found Kara Lawson standing on his doorstep, her face a mixture of fury and anguish. "Where is he?" she demanded, pushing past Jason into the foyer. "Where's my husband?" Jason led her into the living room and offered her a seat, but she refused. "I assume you figured it out," he said. "Figured out that my sister and my husband have been dash." Kara couldn't finish the sentence. "Miles didn't come home last night, and Melissa is not answering my calls. Then I found records of an apartment lease in Scottsdale with both their names." "When did you discover this?" Jason asked, studying Kara closely. "This morning," Kara replied, her voice breaking. "I came straight here. I thought maybe it was a mistake, that there was some explanation." "There isn't," Jason interrupted gently. "It's been going on for 3 years, Kara. I only confirmed it myself yesterday." Kara collapsed onto the sofa, her composure crumbling. 3 years? How could I not have seen it? "We see what we expect to see," Jason said, pouring her a glass of water. "The question is, what do you plan to do now?" Her eyes met his, sudden understanding dawning. "You're not just letting them get away with this." "No," Jason confirmed. "I'm not." The conversation with Kara revealed more pieces of the puzzle. She'd noticed financial discrepancies in their accounts months ago, but Miles had dismissed her concerns with plausible explanations. She had also found hotel receipts for business trips that Miles claimed were legitimate, but the same hotels were documented in the messages between him and Melissa. "I feel like such a fool," Kara whispered. "All those times they were together while we were watching the kids or working." Jason recognized the same pain, the humiliation of being deceived by the people closest to them. What they did reflects on them, not us. After Kara left, promising to consider Jason's proposal for a united front, he made another call, this time to Owen Ramirez, his most trusted project manager. "Owen, I need you to take over operations for a few weeks," Jason instructed. "Family emergency." "Everything okay, boss?" Owen asked, concern evident in his voice. "It will be," Jason replied. "But I need to focus on my kids right now." With the business temporarily handled, Jason retrieved the children from Brian's house. Addison ran to him immediately, wrapping her arms around his waist. Tyler hung back, uncertainty written across his face. "Has Mom called?" Tyler asked hopefully. "Not yet, buddy," Jason answered honestly. "But we need to talk about what happens next." That evening, Jason sat both children down and explained as gently as possible that their mother's choices meant their family would look different moving forward. He was careful not to demonize Melissa despite his own feelings, knowing the children needed to process the situation without additional burdens. "Are we poor now?" Addison asked suddenly, catching Jason off guard. "No, princess. Why would you think that?" I heard Mom telling Uncle Miles that you'd have nothing left, Addison explained. She said you'd lose everything. The innocent revelation of such callous planning only strengthened Jason's resolve. His children had been witnessing more than anyone realized, carrying knowledge no child should bear. We're going to be fine, Jason assured them both. I promise you that. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Jason received a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet tomorrow. Neutral location. It was from Melissa. Jason didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reviewed the comprehensive strategy he and Jordan had developed. The next move was critical not just for retaliation, but for protecting his children from the fallout. He finally replied with a time and location. A coffee shop in a busy shopping center where their conversation would need to remain civil. Then he called Tessa Vaughn again. I need surveillance on a meeting, he instructed. And I need to know who else Melissa contacts between now and then. Tessa's response was immediate and professional. Already on it regarding the financial records you requested. We found the connection and are sending the details now. The information that appeared in Jason's inbox minutes later confirmed his worst fears. The betrayal went beyond personal infidelity. It was a calculated effort to destroy everything he had built, orchestrated by the woman who had once vowed to stand by him. Jason closed his laptop and walked to the window, gazing out at the quiet street where he had built his home and raised his family. The neighbors had no idea of the war being waged behind closed doors, the strategic moves and countermoves that would determine not just his future, but his children's as well. Tomorrow would mark the first public battle in what promised to be a long and complex campaign. But Jason had something Melissa and Miles didn't. Absolute clarity about what he was fighting for and what he was willing to sacrifice to win. As he turned from the window, his phone buzzed with a message from Jordan. Documents filed. Clock starts tomorrow. Jason allowed himself a grim smile. Melissa thought she was setting up a negotiation. She had no idea she was walking into an ambush of her own making. Novo Coffee was buzzing with morning energy when Jason arrived 10 minutes early for his meeting with Melissa. He chose a table in the corner, visible enough to discourage a scene, but private enough for conversation. Tessa Vaughn sat 3 tables away, seemingly absorbed in her laptop, but strategically positioned to observe and record if needed. Jason spotted Melissa the moment she walked in. She had dressed carefully in a conservative blue dress, attempting to project an image of the wrong party rather than the betrayer. Her eyes scanned the coffee shop, momentarily widening when she noticed Tessa, then refocusing on Jason. Who's your friend? Melissa asked as she sat down, nodding toward Tessa. Insurance, Jason replied simply. You didn't come alone either, he added, subtly gesturing toward the window where Miles sat in his Mercedes across the street, pretending to be on a phone call, but clearly watching the coffee shop. Miles is concerned for my safety, Melissa said defensively. After how you behaved at the cabin, Jason interrupted. Let's skip the performance. We both know why we're here. Melissa's carefully composed expression faltered before she regained control. The children need stability. This hostile approach isn't helping anyone. Interesting, Jason remarked. Coming from the woman who planned to disappear with them to Arizona. He paused. But you're right about one thing. They do need stability. That's non-negotiable. Melissa leaned forward. I'm their mother, Jason. Courts favor mothers. Jason acknowledged her point. Courts do favor mothers, but they also take a dim view of parents involved in financial fraud and attempting to flee the state with children during divorce proceedings. The color drained from Melissa's face. You're bluffing. Jason slid a manila envelope across the table. These were filed with the court this morning, emergency custody petition based on flight risk and criminal investigation. Melissa opened the envelope with trembling fingers, scanning the documents inside. Her expression shifted from confidence to shock, then to calculation as she processed the legal maneuver. This won't stand, she said finally. We have explanations for everything. Character witnesses. You're just trying to intimidate me. Am I? Jason asked mildly. Judge Paige Morton granted the temporary order. I have sole physical custody until the hearing next week. You can have supervised visitation until then. Melissa's composure cracked. You can't do this. The children need me. They needed you when you were planning to uproot them from their school, their friends, and their family for your affair, Jason countered. They needed you when you were willing to destroy their father to cover your tracks. It wasn't like that, Melissa protested, lowering her voice as nearby patrons glanced their way. Miles and we fell in love. These things happen. Love doesn't involve embezzlement and fraud, Jason replied evenly. Or setting up your children's father to take the fall for your crimes. Melissa's eyes darted around the coffee shop, calculating her options. What do you want, Jason? Money, the house, name your price. The suggestion that everything, his marriage, his family, his relationship with his children could be reduced to a transaction confirmed everything Jason needed to know about the woman he'd married. I want my children protected, he stated. I want what's rightfully theirs secured, and I want you and Miles to face the consequences of your actions. Melissa's expression hardened. Miles has connections, powerful ones. You're just a contractor with some local success, Jason. Don't overestimate your position. Interesting you should mention his connections, Jason replied, sliding another document across the table. Like Senator Caldwell, whose campaign funds were among those Miles misappropriated, or Mark Ellison at First Bank, who's already cooperating with investigators to save himself. The names visibly shook Melissa. How did you she began. Tessa is very thorough, Jason explained, nodding toward the PI. And people like Miles always leave trails when they think they're too clever to get caught. Melissa glanced toward the window, where Miles was now standing beside his vehicle, watching intently. Her hand moved toward her purse. Before you text him to come rescue you, Jason said, you should know that Jordan Pierce is meeting with the district attorney right now. The only question is whether you're going down with Miles or cutting a deal. A deal, Melissa repeated, her attention suddenly focused. Jason laid out his terms. Melissa would relinquish primary custody, agree to supervised visitation until a psychological evaluation deemed it appropriate for more, surrender all claims to his business assets, and cooperate with authorities regarding Miles's financial crimes. In exchange, Jason concluded, I won't pursue charges against you directly, provided the money taken from our accounts is returned, specifically the children's college funds. Melissa stared at him, measuring his resolve. And if I refuse, she asked. Then the DA gets everything, along with evidence of your active participation in the scheme, Jason replied. The messages where you suggested using my business as cover, the forged documents with my signature that you notarized yourself. For the first time, genuine fear appeared in Melissa's eyes. You'd send me to prison? She whispered. The mother of your children? Jason's voice didn't change. You were willing to send me there. The difference is I'm offering you a way out for the kids, sake not yours. The coffee shop had grown quieter, as if the other patrons sensed the gravity of the conversation happening in the corner. Melissa's phone buzzed with a text from Miles visible on the screen. Everything okay? It's your choice, Jason said, standing to leave. Jordan will contact your attorney with the formal offer. You have 36 hours before we proceed with the criminal complaint. As Jason walked past Tessa's table, he gave a subtle nod. She would monitor Melissa, tracking her next moves. Outside, Jason deliberately walked past Miles's Mercedes, making eye contact with the man who had helped destroy his marriage. Miles rolled down his window. This isn't over, Bradley. Actually, for you it is, Jason replied calmly. The only question left is how hard you fall. Back at home, Jason found Brian overseeing the children in the backyard. Tyler was showing unexpected patience as he helped Addison learn to shoot baskets. His earlier sullen demeanor had been replaced by a moment of brotherly affection. How'd it go? Brian asked as Jason joined him on the patio. Phase 1 complete, Jason replied. Now we wait. The wait didn't last long. By evening, Jason had received calls from 2 attorneys. Melissa's hastily hired divorce lawyer trying to negotiate better terms, and Miles's criminal defense attorney asking about possible evidence. Jason directed both to Jordan Pierce, maintaining the same disciplined approach that had served him throughout his career. When emotional decisions were needed, he made them with his children's long-term well-being as the only priority. 4 days later, the hammer dropped. Federal agents arrested Miles Lawson at his office, charging him with wire fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. The news quickly spread throughout Denver's business community, including to Tyler, who found out from a text sent by a classmate before Jason could explain. The confrontation that followed tested Jason's determination to shield his children from the darker side of the situation. You got Uncle Miles arrested, Tyler accused, storming into Jason's home office. Mom called. She said you're trying to destroy them because you're jealous. Jason set aside the contracts he'd been reviewing. "Sit down, Tyler." "No," Tyler shouted, tears welling up in his eyes. "You're ruining everything. Mom says once you calm down, we can all be adults about this. She says you're being vindictive." Jason's voice grew firm. "Sit down." Something in his father's tone broke through Tyler's anger. The boy dropped into the chair opposite Jason's desk, his teenage defiance battling with the respect he'd always felt for his father. "Uncle Miles was arrested because he stole money from his clients," Jason explained calmly, "including your college fund. That has nothing to do with his relationship with Mom." "Mom says you're making it all up," Tyler countered, though with less conviction. Jason unlocked his desk drawer, pulling out a file and sliding it across the table to his son. "These are bank statements showing transfers from your education account to an offshore account. These are payments your mother authorized." Tyler stared at the documents, disbelief shifting into confusion. "But why would she dash? Because she and Miles needed money to start their new life," Jason explained gently. "And they didn't plan on taking financial responsibility for you or Addison once they left." The boy's face crumpled as the truth began to sink in. "She told me we were all going to Scottsdale," Tyler whispered, his voice cracking. "That you were trying to stop us because you were controlling." Jason moved around the desk, kneeling beside his son. "I would never stop you from seeing your mother, Tyler. But I will stop anyone your mother included from hurting you or Addison." For the first time since the ordeal began, Tyler broke down completely, collapsing into his father's arms. The walls of teenage independence crumbled as he sobbed against Jason's shoulder. "I thought it was your fault," Tyler choked out. "Mom kept saying if you weren't so obsessed with work, if you paid more attention to her dash, your mother made her choices," Jason said, holding his son tightly. "And now we all have to live with the consequences. But we'll do it together." That night, Jason received the call he had been waiting for from Jordan. "She's accepted the terms full custody to you, supervised visitation, financial settlement, as outlined. She's also agreed to cooperate regarding Miles's case." "And Miles?" Jason asked, bracing himself. "Facing 22 years, Jordan replied. "Unless he makes a deal, which seems unlikely given the evidence trail. His attorney is still trying to figure out how you got so much documentation so quickly." After hanging up, Jason sat on his back porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The first phase of his plan had exceeded expectations, leveraging the legal system to deliver consequences his betrayers couldn't escape. But financial ruin and legal jeopardy weren't enough, not for what they'd done to his children, not for how they'd planned to discard him once he had served his purpose in their scheme. Jason's phone buzzed with a text from Tessa Vaughn. "Phase 2 preparations complete. Awaiting your signal." He typed back a single word. "Tomorrow." The trap had been set. Now it was time to spring it. 3 weeks after Miles's arrest, the media frenzy had begun to die down. The financial scandal had made headlines across Colorado. Prominent investment advisor arrested, wealthy clients defrauded, connections to political figures exposed. Miles remained in federal custody, denied bail due to flight risk after prosecutors revealed the Scottsdale apartment lease and evidence of inquiries about non-extradition countries. Melissa had retreated to a small rented condo across town. Her social media accounts, once full of carefully curated posts about their perfect family life, had gone silent. Her cooperation with authorities had spared her from criminal charges, but her reputation among their social circle was in ruins. The polished image she had maintained for years was shattered, exposing the manipulative person beneath. Jason, meanwhile, had kept a dignified silence, focused on stabilizing his children's lives and ensuring his business continued to run smoothly. To the outside world, he appeared as the wronged husband facing adversity with admirable restraint, exactly the impression he wanted to give. Few realized that Jason was simply setting the stage for what came next. On a rainy Tuesday morning, Jason sat in Jordan Pierce's office, reviewing the final paperwork for the divorce settlement. Melissa had given up nearly everything in exchange for immunity and a modest monthly stipend, enough for her to live a middle-class lifestyle far from the luxury she had grown used to, but better than a prison cell. She signed everything, and Jordan confirmed, sliding the documents across his desk. "Full custody is yours, with supervised visitation twice monthly until the family court evaluator approves a change. All financial terms as we outlined." Jason nodded and signed where indicated. Any word from her attorney about the visitation schedule? Here's the interesting part, Jordan replied, leaning back in his chair. She's requested a delay for the first visit, claiming she needs time to process everything before seeing the kids. Process or panic? Jason said with a sly smile. Delay granted, Jordan replied. The kids need stability right now, not her dramatics. After concluding the meeting, Jason drove to a nondescript office building on the outskirts of Denver, where Tessa Vaughn ran her investigation firm. Contrary to her online profile, her actual operation occupied the entire top floor, a sophisticated command center staffed by former intelligence and law enforcement professionals. The final surveillance reports, Tessa said without preamble as Jason entered her private office. She slid a tablet across the desk, displaying photos of Melissa meeting with various individuals over the past 3 weeks. She's reached out to 7 of Miles's former associates, Tessa said, all of whom declined further contact after their initial meetings. She's looking for leverage, Jason observed as he scanned the images. Or money, Tessa added. Most interesting is this one. She swiped to a photo of Melissa with an older, well-dressed man outside an upscale restaurant. Harold Whitman, Tessa said. A real estate developer with ties to the same political circles Miles used to exploit. Has she made any progress with him? 3 meetings so far, Tessa confirmed. Our sources indicate she's offering information in exchange for help. Jason's expression remained neutral. Information about what about me? Tessa pulled up an audio file. We managed to capture portions of their last conversation. She's suggesting she has evidence that you were complicit in some of Miles's schemes, saying you turned on them when you discovered the affair, but were originally a willing participant. The recording played, and Melissa's voice came through clearly. He knows more than he's admitting. I can prove it if you help me get back on my feet. Jason listened without reacting outwardly, though internally his anger sharpened into something colder. Even now, after everything, Melissa was trying to destroy him to save herself. She's desperate, Tessa commented, making claims she can't back up. But still, Jason replied, they could be damaging, especially to the business. If clients get nervous, Tessa studied him closely. You anticipated this. I anticipated everything, Jason confirmed, including what comes next. From his briefcase, Jason withdrew a sealed envelope and placed it on Tessa's desk. This contains final payment for your services, plus the bonus we discussed. Your work has been exemplary. Tessa didn't touch the envelope. Phase 2 moves forward tonight. Yes, Jason replied simply. Everything is prepared. Tessa nodded and pulled up a detailed file on her computer. Your friend Brian has handled the physical arrangements as specified. The digital infrastructure is in place. Timing will be critical. It always is, Jason replied, standing to leave. One chance to do this right. That evening, Jason followed his usual routine with the children dinner at home, helping with homework, Addison's bedtime story, and a brief conversation with Tyler about his upcoming basketball tournament. The domesticity provided both cover and motivation for what would follow once the house was quiet. At precisely 11:45 p.m., after confirming both children were asleep, Jason went to his home office and initiated a secure connection on a laptop that wasn't connected to his home network. The screen displayed a simple interface with a countdown timer and the message, Operation Active, awaiting confirmation. Jason typed a 6-digit authorization code and pressed enter. The screen changed, now showing multiple video feeds, Melissa's condo exterior, the building lobby, and the hallway outside her unit. A separate window displayed a GPS tracker indicating Harold Whitman was at his home across town. Jason sent a text to an unlisted number. Proceed. Minutes later, a maintenance van appeared on the condo's surveillance feed. 2 men in uniform exited, carrying toolboxes into the building. Jason watched through the lobby camera as they briefly spoke with the night security guard, who nodded and buzzed them through after verifying their credentials. These weren't ordinary maintenance workers. They were former military operatives now working in private security associates of Brian's who specialized in discreet operations. Their goal tonight wasn't theft or violence, but something far more valuable, information. For 50 minutes, Jason monitored their progress through the surveillance system, watching as they executed a flawless entry into Melissa's condo while she was out meeting friends. Tessa had confirmed the gathering would last until at least 1:15 a.m. The men worked methodically, photographing documents, cloning electronic devices, and installing nearly undetectable surveillance equipment before leaving with the same efficiency they'd arrived with. At 12:41 a.m., Jason's phone buzzed with a message, "Package secured." By morning, Jason had full access to everything. Melissa's new email accounts, messages, financial records, and most importantly, the fabricated evidence she intended to use against him. The documents were clearly altered versions of legitimate business contracts from Jason's company, tampered with to implicate him in Miles's crimes. What Melissa hadn't realized was that the original, unaltered versions of those contracts were stored in blockchain-verified digital vaults, securing their authenticity with timestamps. Her sloppy forgeries would only incriminate her further if she attempted to use them. But Jason had no intention of waiting for that to happen. The information gathered completed his strategy, including details of Melissa's upcoming meeting with Harold Whitman. She planned to present her false evidence in exchange for financial support to restart her life. At 7:45 a.m., Jason called Brian. "It's time for the final phase. Are your people ready?" "On standby," Brian confirmed. "Tessa sent over the intel package this morning. Clean operation, just like we planned." "Good," Jason replied. "Execution begins tomorrow at 4:15 p.m., Brian hesitated before asking. "Are you sure about this, Jason?" "They crossed that line first," Jason interrupted, his voice cold with finality. "When they tried to steal my children's future. When they plotted to frame me for their crimes. When they betrayed everything I built." "Understood," Brian acknowledged. "We'll be ready." That afternoon, Jason attended Tyler's basketball game, cheered at Addison's dance recital, and hosted a small birthday celebration for her with a few of her school friends. To anyone watching, he was simply a devoted father rebuilding his family's life after betrayal, not a man orchestrating an elaborate trap, preparing to close in on those who had wronged him. As he tucked Addison into bed that night, she asked the question that had hung in the air between them. "Dad, is Mom ever coming back home?" Jason smoothed her hair gently. "No, princess. Mom has made different choices for her life now." Addison considered this with a seriousness beyond her years. "Is it because she loves Uncle Miles more than us?" The question struck Jason like a blow, exposing the raw wound beneath his calm exterior. "Your mom loves you, Addison," he said softly. "She just made mistakes that can't be undone. Like when I broke your special picture frame and tried to hide it." Jason smiled sadly. "Bigger mistakes than that. Adult mistakes." Addison nodded as though this explanation satisfied her. "I'm glad you're not going anywhere, Daddy." "Never," Jason promised, kissing her forehead. "Not ever." After both children were asleep, Jason returned to his home office. The surveillance feeds from Melissa's condo showed her pacing anxiously while on the phone. The directional microphones from the previous night captured her conversation clearly. "Tomorrow at 4:15, Harold, yes, I have everything prepared." "No, Jason has no idea. The documents prove he knew everything Miles was doing." "Yes, enough leverage to force a renegotiation of the settlement." Jason allowed himself a cold smile as he activated the final protocol on his secure laptop. A countdown timer appeared, 19 hours and 10 minutes, counting down to tomorrow afternoon. The spider had spun his web. Now it was time for the flies to become entangled. The Whitmore Hotel's lobby radiated timeless elegance, marble floors, mahogany paneling, and discreet staff who instinctively recognized wealth and power without needing to be told. At 3:52 p.m., Jason settled into one of the high-backed leather chairs, positioning himself perfectly to observe both the main entrance and the elevators leading to the private meeting rooms upstairs. His tailored charcoal suit projected the image of a successful businessman, a persona he rarely embraced but could effortlessly adopt when needed. A folded Financial Times sat untouched beside him. His focus was on the hotel's revolving door. At precisely 4 p.m., Melissa entered. She had dressed carefully for the occasion in a conservative navy dress, understated jewelry, and a hairstyle meant to project competence rather than her usual calculated glamour. The portfolio clutched in her manicured hands contained what she believed was her salvation documents implicating Jason and Miles's schemes. Jason watched as she approached the reception desk to confirm her meeting with Harold Whitman in Executive Suite 3. The receptionist directed her to the elevators with practiced politeness. Melissa didn't notice Jason as she passed within 18 feet of him. Her mind focused on rehearsing her pitch. Once she entered the elevator, Jason checked his phone. A secure messaging app displayed an update from Brian. All assets in position. Whitman arrived through the service entrance 12 minutes ago. Jason responded, proceeding as planned. At 4:20 p.m., Jason took the elevator to the third floor, nodding at the plainclothes security officer stationed near the emergency exit, another one of Brian's associates, ensuring everything unfolded smoothly. The hallway was empty except for a maintenance cart strategically placed outside Executive Suite 3. It appeared to be abandoned by hotel staff, but in reality, it contained surveillance equipment monitoring the meeting inside. Jason approached the suite, withdrawing an electronic key card provided by the hotel's head of security, a former client who owed him a significant favor. He paused, listening to the voices inside through an earpiece connected to the surveillance system. These documents clearly showed Jason Bradley's signature authorizing transactions related to the diverted funds. Melissa's voice was confident. He was fully aware of Miles's activities, but turned on him when he discovered our relationship. Harold Whitman's response was measured, skeptical. These are serious allegations, Mrs. Bradley. If authentic, they contradict the narrative that's been established in the media and with prosecutors. That's why they're valuable, Melissa pressed. Jason has cultivated this image of the wronged husband, the dedicated father victimized by his wife and brother-in-law. These prove otherwise. And what exactly do you want from me in exchange for this information? Whitman asked. Financial backing to restart my life, Melissa replied without hesitation. And your connections to force a renegotiation of my divorce settlement. The trap was set. Jason swiped the key card and entered the suite without knocking. Melissa's face shifted from shock to fear as he calmly walked into the room. Whitman, a silver-haired man in his 60s with the weathered features of someone accustomed to power, displayed only mild surprise. I believe I'm right on time, Jason said pleasantly, as if he had been invited. Melissa gasped instinctively, gathering the documents spread across the table. How did you dash? Mr. Whitman and I have mutual interests, Jason interrupted, extending his hand to the older man. Thank you for arranging this meeting. Whitman stood and shook Jason's hand firmly. Mr. Bradley, your reputation precedes you. Melissa looked between the two men, comprehension dawning slowly. You know each other? Not personally until today, Jason clarified, taking a seat at the table. But Mr. Whitman contacted my attorney yesterday after you approached him with your proposition. The color drained from Melissa's face. Harold, whatever he's told you, Whitman raised a hand, silencing her. I've known Frank Lawson, Miles's father, for 30 years. When his sister-in-law came to me claiming to have evidence that contradicted everything the authorities have established, I did my due diligence. This is a setup, Melissa accused, standing abruptly. I'm leaving. I wouldn't, Jason advised, his tone cool. Not unless you want to explain those forged documents to the FBI agents waiting for you in the lobby. Jason's phone buzzed with a message from Tessa, federal agents on standby. Evidence package delivered. Melissa sank back into her chair, her face pale as the reality of her situation began to sink in. You planned this. I planned for everything, Jason corrected, including your attempts to frame me after securing your immunity deal. Whitman leaned forward. Mrs. Bradley, I agreed to this meeting not to help you, but to understand the full extent of the situation affecting a family I've known for decades. What I've seen today confirms everything Mr. Bradley told me. What's that? Melissa challenged. That you're willing to destroy anyone, Whitman stated flatly, including the father of your children, to save yourself. He paused. The documents you presented are obvious forgeries. Coming here today wasn't just foolish, it's attempted fraud and a violation of your immunity agreement. Jason placed his own folder on the table. These are the original blockchain-verified contracts with immutable timestamps. Alongside them are records of your activities since Miles's arrest, including your meetings with his former associates and your explicit statements about fabricating evidence against me. Melissa's facade finally shattered. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice faltering. Haven't you taken enough? I've taken nothing that wasn't rightfully mine or our children's, Jason replied, his voice devoid of emotion. But you're right. This meeting isn't about taking more. It's about ensuring you understand your position moving forward. He slid a document across the table, an amended custody agreement with terms even more restrictive than the original. You'll sign this now, relinquishing all visitation rights until a court-appointed psychiatrist certifies that you're no longer a harmful influence on our children. You'll also sign a sworn affidavit confirming that the documents you presented today are forgeries created solely by you. And if I refuse? Melissa asked, though her voice lacked conviction. Then Mr. Whitman will testify about this meeting. The federal agents downstairs will receive the evidence of your attempted fraud, and your immunity deal will be voided, Jason stated matter-of-factly. You'll join Miles in federal custody by nightfall. Whitman stood, buttoning his suit jacket. I've seen enough, Mr. Bradley. I'll leave you to conclude your business. My statement has been recorded as agreed. He nodded toward a small device on the table disguised as a pen holder. After Whitman left, Jason and Melissa sat in silence for several moments. The woman who had once shared his bed for 16 years now looked hollow, her makeup unable to hide the growing lines of stress and fear. You've thought of everything, she finally said, her hands trembling as she reached for the documents. Not everything, Jason replied. I never thought you'd try to take my children from me. I never thought you'd try to destroy everything I built. Those were your innovations. As Melissa signed the papers, tears finally breaking through her composed exterior, she asked the question that had clearly been haunting her. Did you ever love me, Jason? Really love me? Jason paused, contemplating the question. I loved who I thought you were, but that person never existed. Once the documents were signed, Jason gathered them into his briefcase. The agents downstairs will escort you home. Your belongings will be delivered to your sister's house in Broomfield tomorrow. You're not to return to Denver without written permission from the court. Kara won't take me in, Melissa protested. Not after everything. She's your sister, Jason replied coldly. And unlike you, she understands family loyalty. The arrangement is already made. As Jason turned to leave, Melissa made one final attempt. The children will ask for me. Addison will cry for her mother. Jason paused at the door, allowing himself a brief moment of genuine emotion. Yes, they will. And that pain, their pain that you caused, is something I can never forgive. Not if I lived 1,000 years. The hotel corridor was empty as Jason walked toward the elevator, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Inside, he allowed himself a moment to close his eyes, exhaling slowly, releasing the tension from the confrontation. When the elevator doors opened to the lobby, he was composed again. Tessa Vaughn was waiting near the entrance, pretending to review documents on a tablet. As Jason approached, she stepped beside him without acknowledging him directly. Miles received the evidence package at the detention center an hour ago, she murmured. His attorney has already contacted the prosecutors about a potential deal. Too late, Jason replied, his voice barely audible as they crossed the lobby. The senator withdrew his support this morning. No deals. Outside, Brian waited by the car, opening the door as Jason approached. Once inside, as they moved through downtown traffic, Brian asked the question. Is it done? Jason nodded, loosening his tie. It's done. She's finished. And the children? Tessa asked. We'll never have to see her again unless they choose to when they're older, Jason replied. The psychiatric evaluation requirement ensures no judge will override it, given the evidence we've gathered. The car drove through the city toward Jason's home, where Mrs. Caldwell, an older widow who cared for the children after school, would be preparing dinner with Addison, helping to monitor Tyler's homework. As Denver's skyline faded behind them, Jason reflected on the past month, the discovery, the betrayal, the calculated response. He had dismantled the conspiracy against him, turning his enemies' weapons back on them. Some might view his actions as excessive, even cruel. But those people hadn't seen Addison's tears when she realized her mother was willing to abandon her. They hadn't witnessed Tyler's confusion and pain when he learned of the lies he'd been told. They hadn't felt the cold determination that comes from knowing your children's future had been gambled away by the people who should have protected them most. Any regrets? Brian asked quietly as they turned into Jason's neighborhood. Jason looked out the window at his home, the lights glowing warmly in the windows. Addison's bicycle propped against the garage door, and the basketball hoop where he and Tyler had begun reconnecting during evening games. Not a single one, Jason answered with absolute certainty. The spider had sprung his trap. The web had held just as cold. Implacable justice had been served. 7 months later, Denver awoke to a crisp, clear morning. Sunlight sparkled on the fresh layer of snow that had fallen overnight. Jason stood by the kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching Addison and Tyler in the backyard as they built a snowman. Their laughter floated through the glass, an increasingly familiar sound as the wounds of betrayal slowly began to heal. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of Jordan Pierce for their quarterly review. Jason greeted his attorney with a firm handshake and led him to the home office where financial reports and legal documents were already laid out on the desk. The business is thriving, Jordan noted, scanning the documents. 3 major contracts signed since the start of the year. Looks like the scandal didn't hurt your reputation after all. If anything, it helped. Clients respect clarity, Jason replied, settling into his chair. They know I don't tolerate dishonesty at any level. Jordan nodded, then turned to more personal matters. Miles's sentencing is next week. Prosecutors are recommending the maximum 27 years given the scope of the fraud and the number of victims. Good, Jason said without hesitation. And Melissa, Jordan continued. She's still living with Kara in Broomfield. The court-appointed psychiatrist submitted his 3rd report yesterday. He slid a folder across the desk. He still advises against reinstating visitation. Notes her continued refusal to accept responsibility or acknowledge the emotional damage to the children. Jason read the summary without expression, though inside he felt a grim satisfaction. The carefully constructed system was delivering the results he had engineered. She's filed for another hearing, Jordan added. Judge Winters denied it. He made it clear he needs to see substantial behavioral change before even considering a revision to the custody agreement. Which won't happen, Jason said. Not while she's still in contact with Miles through intermediaries. Jordan raised an eyebrow. Tessa's still monitoring, Jason said flatly. Some things are worth the cost. The children's safety isn't negotiable. After wrapping up the meeting, Jason walked Jordan to the door. As they passed the living room, Jordan paused to glance at the family photos on the mantel. New images of Jason with the kids at various outings, their smiles broader, their eyes brighter than in the past. You've rebuilt well, Jordan remarked. Not many could have steered this outcome from such a wreck. Jason's expression didn't change. I protected what mattered. Nothing more. Once Jordan had gone, Jason stepped into the backyard to join the children. Addison immediately pulled him into their snowman project, instructing him to find proper sticks for arms while Tyler focused on shaping the snowman's head. Dad, can we invite Uncle Brian and his family for dinner tonight? Tyler asked. His relationship with Jason had deepened over the past months. The distant, withdrawn boy had become engaged and eager for his father's attention. Sure, Jason said, helping to lift the snowman's head into place. I'll give him a call once we finish this masterpiece. Addison worked with quiet intensity, her creativity flourishing since the separation. The child therapist Jason had brought in observed how Addison processed her emotions through art and imaginative play, and how remarkably resilient she was. Dad, does Mom ever ask about us? Addison asked suddenly, catching Jason off guard. He crouched down beside her, choosing his words with care. She does. She asks the judge and the doctors when she can see you again, Jason said gently. But she doesn't call, Addison noted quietly. Send letters. The court has rules about that right now, Jason explained, maintaining the careful story he had built for her. Remember what Dr. Navarro said? Mom has to get better first. Addison nodded thoughtfully. Like when you're sick and have to take all your medicine before you can go back to school. Something like that, Jason replied, grateful for her understanding. Tyler, now 15, wasn't so easily reassured. Later that evening, after dinner with Brian's family, Tyler found Jason in the study reviewing blueprints for a new project. I read some articles online, Tyler said, not bothering with small talk. About Mom and Miles about what they did. Jason set the papers aside, turning his full attention to his son. I see. What do you want to ask? They stole money, Tyler said bluntly. From a lot of people. And they tried to blame you. Yes, Jason confirmed. That's exactly what happened. Tyler hesitated, then asked the question that had clearly been weighing on him. Would Mom really have let you go to prison? While she and Miles took me and Addison to Arizona. Jason considered softening the truth, but he chose honesty instead. Tyler had earned that. The evidence suggests that was their plan, Jason said. Yes. Tyler sank into the leather chair across from the desk, the weight of the confirmation settling over him. "How does someone change like that?" he asked. "She was our mom. She used to make pancakes on Sundays. Help us with school projects." "People are complicated," Jason said carefully. "Sometimes they hide who they really are for a long time. And sometimes they change when they think they found something they want more than what they already have." "Did you hate her?" Tyler asked quietly. "When you found out?" Jason paused, remembering those early days of shock and betrayal. "I was angry, hurt, deeply disappointed," he said. "But mostly I was focused on protecting you and Addison." "By making sure she couldn't see us anymore?" Tyler asked. "By making sure she couldn't hurt you anymore," Jason corrected gently. "There's a difference." Tyler nodded slowly. "I used to be mad at you. Thought it was your fault. That you broke up our family. That you made Mom leave." "I know," Jason said. "That's a normal way to feel." Tyler looked him in the eyes. "But you didn't break anything. They did." The quiet statement delivered with the blunt clarity only a teenager could offer hit Jason harder than he expected. For months, he had carried out his response with ruthless precision, never allowing himself to fully process the emotional wreckage left behind. Tyler's simple words didn't offer forgiveness, not for Melissa, not for Miles, but they sparked something else. A release, a loosening of the cold fury that had kept him locked in place. "Thank you," Jason said quietly. Later that night, after both kids had gone to bed, Jason sat outside on the back porch, braving the cold beneath a sky of scattered stars. His phone buzzed with a message from Tessa Vaughn. "Final surveillance contract expires tomorrow. Renew." Jason stared at the screen for a long moment. For more than half a year, he had kept tabs on Melissa's every move, partly for security, partly as the last hold on a situation that had once threatened to unravel his entire world. Finally, he typed his response. "No renewal needed. Final report is sufficient." It wasn't forgiveness. Jason Bradley did not forgive betrayal, but it was something else, the quiet acknowledgement that the war was over, and he had won. Melissa and Miles would never recover from the devastation Jason had orchestrated. Their punishment would persist even without his continued involvement. The following morning brought grim news. Miles Lawson had attempted self-harm in his detention unit after learning that his final appeal for leniency had been denied. He survived the attempt, but would remain under medical supervision until his sentencing. Brian delivered the update, but Jason's expression remained unchanged, as it had throughout the long ordeal. "Keep me updated," was all he said. Later that day, at the construction site of his latest Initiative A community center partially funded from his own pocket, Jason walked the grounds with quiet satisfaction. The foundation had been poured with precision, and the structure was steadily rising against the cold Colorado sky. Owen Ramirez approached, hard hat tucked under his arm. "Structure's looking good, boss. We're ahead of schedule, whether or not." "Excellent," Jason replied with a nod. "The children's wing is the priority. I want the roof sealed before the next storm hits." As they moved through the site discussing logistics and material deliveries, Jason felt something he hadn't in months: genuine interest. The single-minded focus he had maintained during the long campaign of justice and retribution had drained him. Now that energy could be repurposed for building, not dismantling. That evening, as Jason helped Addison with a sprawling science project, a model of the solar system that had completely taken over the dining room, his phone rang. Seeing Kara Lawson's name on the screen, he stepped into the hallway, immediately alert. Her voice was tense. "I thought you should hear this from me first. Melissa's gone." "Gone where?" he asked sharply. "No one knows," Kara replied. "She left a note. Said she couldn't live with what she'd done. Took her passport and what cash she had saved. Police are looking." Jason absorbed the information quickly, assessing the legal implications, the potential disruption to the custody and psychiatric determinations he had fought to cement. "When did this happen?" "Last night," Kara said, after she found out about Miles's self-harm attempt. "I've already informed the court through her attorney." The call ended, and Jason remained still in the hallway, the weight of the news settling in. Melissa's disappearance wasn't a triumph. It wasn't a defeat either. It was simply the end. "Dad," Addison called from the dining room. "I need help with Neptune's rings." Jason returned, leaving thoughts of Melissa behind, focusing on the daughter who stood before him, glue stick in hand. In the weeks that followed, life gradually settled into new rhythms. Police classified Melissa as a missing person, though no evidence of foul play was found. International border records later confirmed she had crossed into Mexico before vanishing, likely using the false IDs Miles had once arranged for their aborted escape. Jason broke the news to the children as gently as possible, presenting it not as abandonment, but as another result of their mother's unresolved struggles. With the help of the family therapist, Addison and Tyler processed their emotions while Jason remained a constant, steady, present, and unshakable. Exactly 1 year after the trip to the cabin that had shattered their old lives, Jason stood in his backyard watching his children laugh and play with neighborhood friends. A barbecue crackled on the patio where Brian and his wife manned the grill. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues mingled over drinks and laughter. Tessa Vaughn appeared quietly at his side, a rare appearance for the typically reserved investigator. She noted the change with a glance toward Tyler, now laughing easily with a group of friends, a stark contrast to the angry, withdrawn boy he'd been just a year earlier. Quite a transformation, she observed. Children are resilient when they have stability, Jason replied. And their father? She asked, her tone probing. Is he resilient too? Jason paused. Considering I've been called many things, ruthless, unforgiving, cold but never weak. That's not what I asked, Tessa said quietly. Before he could respond, Addison came running up to show him her latest drawing, a family portrait of the three of them beneath a brightly shining sun. Jason accepted it with a smile, genuine warmth softening his features. I'm exactly who I need to be, he told Tessa. Someone who protects what matters, whatever it takes. As the evening came to a close, the sun dipped below the Denver skyline, casting golden shadows across the yard where a new chapter of life had taken root. Guests said their goodbyes, the children tidied up without protest, and the house soon settled into its peaceful routine. Later, alone in his study, Jason opened a drawer containing the final surveillance report on Melissa, the last remaining thread of a woman who had nearly destroyed everything he loved. After a brief hesitation, he fed the documents into the shredder, watching silently as they turned to irretrievable fragments. It wasn't forgiveness. Jason Bradley did not forgive betrayal, but it was an acknowledgement that justice, precise, unrelenting, and final, had been served. The past had been put in its place. Ahead lay the future, and Jason turned toward it with his children at his side. It would be built with the same care and clarity that had guided his vengeance. Some might call it merciless. He called it justice. Cold justice. That's the end of the story. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching.